Hello students, myself Jinalisha welcomes you on behalf of Saraswat International Academy. Students, today we will begin with the last part of the chapter, the living world. Before starting the last part, what we have studied in the last lectures. So students, in the previous lectures, in the previous videos, we discussed regarding the taxonomic categories. We studied in detail regarding the 7 taxonomic categories. Now today students, we will begin with the topic taxonomical aids. So what do you mean by the taxonomical aids? So basically they are the techniques and procedures which will be helpful for the taxonomical studies. Aids, it means help. So the techniques, the procedures, the specimens which will be helpful to us for the taxonomic studies, what are they called as? They are called as the taxonomical aids. So students, what is it? So they are the techniques and procedures to store the information as well as the specimens or identification and classification of the organisms. So what is taxonomical aid? They are the techniques, procedures to store the information as well as the specimens. So basically they are the procedures which helps to store the information as well as specimens which will be further used for the taxonomical studies or for the classification purpose of the organisms or identification and classification of organisms. Now students, what is the importance of the taxonomical studies? So students, taxonomic studies of the various species of plants, animals and other organisms are useful in agriculture, forestry, industry as well as in knowing the bioresources and their diversity. So what is the importance of the taxonomical studies? So taxonomical studies of plants, animals and other organisms, they are very useful in the field of agriculture, in the field of forestry, in the field of industry. Apart from these 3 fields, the taxonomical study also helps us in knowing our bioresources. What are the organisms present in our country, our bioresources as well as their diversity. So that is the most important usefulness of the taxonomic studies. It helps in agriculture, forestry, industry as well as through these studies we can know our bioresources and their diversity, means their variety. Now for taxonomic studies, that is taxonomic studies requires what? It requires the correct classification and identification of organisms. These studies, it requires correct classification and identification of organisms. Now students, these identification and correct classification requires what? So identification of organism, it requires intensive laboratory and field studies. So see, what is the importance of taxonomic studies? It is important in forestry, in agriculture, in industry as well as through it we can know our bioresources. Now for these studies, what is required? Correct classification and identification. Now how identification can be done? What is required for the identification purpose? So it requires the laboratory as well as the field studies. Now the collection of the actual specimens of plants and animal species, it is essential and is prime source of the taxonomic studies. So now students, what is the most important and prime source of taxonomic studies? So the collection of the actual specimens of the plants and animals, that is they should be collected in their actual forms. So that is the most important basis of the taxonomic studies. The plants and animal specimens, they should be collected in their actual forms and this is the most important source of the taxonomic studies. to study any organisms, we need the actual form of that organisms, and that is the main source of the taxonomic study. Suppose if you want to study any plant, any animal, so if you get the actual specimen of that plant and animal, that is the most important thing required in the taxonomic studies. Now, students, these are also fundamental to studies, that is, it is very important for our studies, as well as it helps in training the field of systematics. So, if you want to study systematics too, then these studies play the very important role. So, they are also fundamental to studies and are essential for training in systematics. Suppose if you want to deal with systematics, then this taxonomical studies plays the very important role. Now, this taxonomical studies, they are also used for the classification of an organism, and the information which is gathered is also stored along with the specimens. So, now students, taxonomical studies, they are also useful to classify the organisms, and whatever information is gathered while classifying the organisms, that information is also preserved along with the specimen. Are you getting my point? The taxonomic studies, they are very important in the classification of organisms. Now, whatever information you have gathered while classifying the organisms, that information will be also stored along with the specimens, and sometimes the specimens itself are preserved for future studies. So, not only information is stored, but sometimes the specimens are also stored in their forms for the future studies. So, that is the importance of the taxonomic studies. Now, some of the taxonomical aids, some of the things which plays the important role in the taxonomy are herbarium, botanical gardens, museum, zoological parks, key. Along with it, flora, manuals, monographs and catalogues. They are some of the important sources which are developed by the biologists to study the taxonomy. We will study each of them in brief. Now, students, some of the taxonomical aids I told you are herbarium, botanical gardens, museums, zoological parks, key. Apart from that, monographs, then there are flora, manuals and catalogues. So, students, these all taxonomical aids we will study in brief. So, students, first of all we will study regarding the herbarium. So, basically herbarium. So, here herbs and little shrubs will be maintained. So, what is an herbarium? It is a storehouse of collected plant specimens that are dried, pressed and preserved on sheets. So, basically it is a storehouse of the collected plant specimens. Now, this collected plant specimens, first of all they will be dried, then they will be pressed under the, basically it will be a butter paper or a parchment paper between which they will be pressed, so that the water get absorbed, and finally they will be preserved on a sheet. So, basically this type of sheet will be there. This is a plant specimen. What is it? This is the specimen, and this is the label which should be always there on the specimen. So, basically it is a storehouse of collected plant specimens which are dried, pressed and they are preserved on sheets. So, basically this is the plant specimen which is mounted on the sheets. Now, how are they mounted on the sheets? With the help of the adhesives or glues. With the help of adhesive and glue, suppose this is a sheet and this is, say for example, a specimen. So, here on this specimen, what will happen? This particular, on this sheet, this specimen will be mounted, and this mounting will be done with the help of what? It will be done with the help of an adhesive or the glue. Now, students, whatever sheets are developed, they are arranged according to some universally accepted method of classification. So, these sheets are arranged further according to the universally accepted system of classification. Once the sheet is prepared, the sheet will be arranged according to the universally accepted system of classification. Now students, these specimens along with the description on a herbarium sheets. So, this plant specimen which is mounted on the herbarium sheet, along with that herbarium sheet certain information will be there, certain description will be there. So, it becomes a storehouse, also called as a repository for the future use. So, this herbarium sheet can be further used for the taxonomical studies. Now students, a herbarium sheet, see students, this is a herbarium sheet which contains a plant specimen. This is a specimen. How is the specimen attached to the sheet? So, with the help of glue or with the help of an adhesive. Now, this sheet consists of a printed label which is pasted on the lower right corner of the herbarium sheets. Very important student. There is a printed label pasted on the lower right corner of the herbarium sheet, and this particular label contains certain information. So, what information is printed on the label? So, it contains the name of the collector, the date and place of the collection, the local or you can say common, English and scientific name of the plant, and the family to which the plant belongs. So, there is a printed label pasted on the lower right corner of the herbarium sheet, and this label consists of the following information like name of the collector, date and place of the collection of that particular plant, local or you can say common, English and scientific name of the plant, and the family to which the plant belongs. So, this information is printed on the label, and this label is then pasted on the lower right corner of the herbarium sheet. And these herbarium sheets, they serve as the quick referral system in taxonomic studies. So, these herbarium sheets, they provide quick reference at the time of the taxonomic studies. So, this is regarding the first taxonomical aid, herbarium, which is a storehouse of collected plant specimens which are dried, pressed and preserved on the sheets. How are they mounted on the sheets? They are mounted on the sheets with the help of glue or an adhesive. And finally, this sheet which is prepared will be arranged according to some accepted method of classification, and there will be a printed label which contains certain information on the lower right side of the herbarium sheet. Now students, the next taxonomical aid is botanical gardens. Now students, in the herbarium I told you that the plant specimens, they are dried, pressed and preserved. So basically in the herbarium sheets, small herbs will be there, or you can say certain parts of the plants can be preserved. But here we are not preserving the plant specimen in the living condition, right? We are not preserving a plant specimen in a living condition. Whereas in a botanical garden, what is a botanical garden? So they are the specialized gardens that have the collections of living plants for reference. So students, that is the main difference between a botanical garden and a herbarium. In an herbarium, the plants are not maintained in a living condition. Whereas when we talk about the botanical gardens, here the plant specimens are maintained in the living conditions. Now students, mainly those plants which are economically important and plants which are of medicinal importance, as well as the plants which are exotic, which are not to this particular region, to a particular region. Those plants will be collected and will be grown in the botanical garden. Which plants are normally grown? The plants which have the medicinal use, the plants which are economically important, and the exotic plants. Exotic plants are the plants which are not native to any particular region. So, such plants will be collected and grown in the botanical garden. Now, whatever adequate requirements for the plants are there, all those requirements will be provided in the botanical garden. Whatever requirements of the plant are there, whatever necessary conditions are there, all those necessary conditions will be provided in the botanical garden. Now, here basically the plant species are grown for the identification purpose. Mainly the plants in the botanical garden are grown for the identification purpose. Now, like a label is there in the herbarium sheet, similarly each plant here is also labeled. And what label consists of? The botanical, or you can say scientific name of the plant, as well as its family. In certain cases, the uses of the plants are also mentioned and some system of classification is also mentioned. But compulsorily the botanical name, or you can say scientific name, and the family of the plant should be there on the label. So, like label is there on the herbarium sheet, similarly the label is also there in the botanical garden. That is, each plant in the botanical garden will be labeled. And what information is there on the label? Mainly the botanical or scientific name and its family. Now, some world famous or some important famous botanical gardens are: first one, the Royal Botanical Garden, which is in Kew, London. Students, this is very important for your NEET purpose as well as for your board. Royal Botanical Garden in Kew, London. Indian Botanical Garden in Howrah, Kolkata, India. And National Botanical Research Institute in Lucknow, India. Apart from this, there are many botanical gardens, but these are few of the famous botanical garden. Royal Botanical Garden in Kew, London, Indian Botanical Garden in Howrah, India, and National Botanical Research Institute in Lucknow, India. So, this is regarding the two taxonomical aids, herbarium and botanical gardens. The main difference between two of them is, in the herbarium, the plants are not maintained in the living condition, whereas in the botanical gardens, the plants are maintained in the living condition. Now, we will deal with the other taxonomical aids. Now, students, the next taxonomical aid is museums. So, basically you all might have visited the museum, students, right? So, basically students, here the plants and animal specimens, they are preserved for the study as well as for the reference. Why are the plant specimens and animal specimens preserved here? They are preserved for study and reference. So, students, what is a museum? It is a collection of preserved plant and animal specimens for study and reference. Now, students, museums are generally set up in an educational institutes like college and schools. Basically, many universities have their inbuilt museums for the for the zoological and botanical studies. So, normally the museums, they are set up in the educational institutes like, you can say, colleges and schools, and many universities have their own museums for the purpose of the botanical and zoological studies. Now, students, those plants which cannot be maintained in herbaria, they are maintained in the museum. Those plant specimens which are not maintained in the herbaria can be maintained or can be preserved in the museums. So, plants which cannot be maintained in herbaria are preserved in museums. like algae, fungi, mosses, ferns, fruits, etc. These all cannot be maintained in herbaria because we know herbarium sheet is very small and these structures cannot be easily preserved on the herbarium sheets. So, those structures which cannot be preserved in the herbaria can be preserved in the museums. Now students, how are the specimens preserved in museum? The specimens are preserved in containers or jars which contain the preservative solutions. Now students, you might have seen in your school biology laboratory where there are certain specimens kept. Now there are certain specimens which are kept in the jar. Now in that jar or container there is a preservative solution, so that that particular specimen does not get damaged. So the specimens, they are preserved in the containers or jars in an preservative solution. Now in certain cases the plant and animal specimens, they may be also preserved as dry specimens. In certain conditions they may also be preserved. The plant and animal specimens may be preserved as the dried specimens. Now how are insects preserved in the museum? So basically students, they are kept or preserved in insect boxes, but before preserving the insects they are collected, killed and then they are pinned. So they are pinned, that is with the help of pin they will be kept in the insect boxes. So insects, they are preserved in insect boxes after collecting, killing and pinning. Now students, how are the larger animals kept in the museum? So either they will be stuffed. Stuffed means their living tissues, they will be removed, and instead of living tissues there will be the stuffing of cotton, of dry leaves, fodder, etc. So larger animals, they are either stuffed or their skeletals may be preserved. So for larger animals, their preservation is done by either stuffing them or in their skeletal form. So these are the ways in which the organisms or specimens are preserved in museum. So basically we know that museums, they are set up in the educational institutes like schools and colleges, and those plants which cannot be maintained in herbaria are preserved in museum. How are the specimens preserved? Either in the containers or jar. Very important thing is the need of the preservative solution. Some plant and animal specimens are preserved as dried specimen. Insects are preserved in insect boxes after collecting, killing and pinning them. And finally larger animals, they are either stuffed or may be preserved in the skeletal form. Now students, the next taxonomical aid is zoological parks, which are commonly called as zoo. So now students, I told you that in museum also animals are maintained, but in museum the animals are maintained in the dead conditions. They are not maintained in the living conditions. Students, whereas in the zoological parks all the animals are maintained in the living organisms, in their living forms. So basically the wild animals, they are kept in the museum in their living forms, and all the natural requirements of an animal will be provided in the museum, in the zoological park. So what are zoological parks? They are the places where wild animals are kept in the protected environment under human care, and it enables us to learn about the food habit and behavior. So basically what is a zoological park? It is a place where wild animals are kept in the protected environment under the human care. So under the human care, human beings will be taking the care of the wild animals, and by doing this we get to know about the food habit and the behavior of that particular animals. By keeping the animals in the zoological park or zoo, it enables us to know the food habit and the behavior of the animals. Now, all the animals which are maintained in the zoo, they are provided the conditions which are similar to their natural habitat. So, whatever conditions are required by the organism, all those conditions will be provided in the museum. So, conditions similar to the natural habitat will be provided to each and every organism in the zoological park. Now, children, they love visiting these parks and they are commonly called as zoo. So, that is regarding a zoological park. It is a place where wild animals are maintained in living condition under the human care, and through this it enables us to know the food habitat and behavior of an organism. Now, basically the natural conditions similar to the natural habitat will be provided to each and every animal maintained in the zoological park, and these zoological parks are commonly called as zoos. So, that is regarding the museum and zoological park. In museum, the animals and plant specimens are not maintained in the living condition, whereas in the zoological park, the animals, basically the wild animals, are maintained in which condition? They are maintained in the living conditions. Now, students, we will deal with the last part of the taxonomical aid, that is key and certain flora, manuals, monograph and catalogues. Now, students, we will deal with the last taxonomical aids, key, flora, manuals, monograph and catalog. So, first of all, we will deal with key. So, what is a key? So, it is a taxonomical aid which is used for identification of plants and animals based on their similarities and dissimilarities. So, basically a taxonomical aid which helps in identification of plants and animals based on their similarities and dissimilarity, it is called as a key. Now, how the key is prepared or how it is useful? So, it helps in identification of plants and animals by selecting and eliminating the characters according to their presence or absence in the organism under study. Now, how are keys prepared or how are keys helpful in identification of plants and animals? So, basically they are helpful in identification of plants and animals by selecting as well as eliminating the characters which are present or absent in the organism under study. Suppose a character we are considering, that say for example the character which we are considering is a mammary gland. So, those organisms in which the mammary gland will be present, it will be selected. So, what is it written? Selecting and eliminating the characters according to their presence or absence in the organisms under study. So, those character which is present in the organism, that particular will be selected, and the other character which is not present in the organism, it will be rejected. Say for example, I say number of cotyledon as one character. So, either there will be 2 cotyledon or either it will be 1 cotyledon. So, suppose in an organism there is a 1 cotyledon, say for example maize we consider. Maize is an organism in which only 1 cotyledon is present, right? So, in maize I will be selecting what? That it is a 1 cotyledonous plant. What character I am rejecting? I am rejecting the character of 2 cotyledon. So, here how keys are helpful in identification of plants and animals? By selecting and eliminating the characters according to their presence or absence in the organisms. Those character which is present, it will be selected, and the characters which are not present, it will be eliminated. I explained you by taking the example of maize. and the character which we are studying is a number of cotyledon. Number of cotyledon may be 1, it may be 2. So, if I consider maize, which character I will consider? 1 cotyledon. Which character I will eliminate or reject? The 2 cotyledon. So, basically the keys, they use a pair of 2 contrasting character, and that pair of contrasting character is called as couplet. Maize, I told you, character I said number of cotyledon. So, there are 2 contrasting things. One is 1 cotyledon, another one is 2 cotyledon. So, what key consists of? It consists of pair of 2 contrasting characters, and this pair of contrasting character is called as a couplet. So, the couplets, it results in the acceptance of one character that is present in the organism and rejection of the other that is absent in the organism. Say for example, I explained you maize. Say for example, the character under study is number of cotyledon, right? Now there are 2 possibilities, students. Either there may be 1 cotyledon or there may be 2 cotyledon. Now students, I consider the organism as the maize, right? Now when I consider maize, how many cotyledon are there? 1 cotyledon. So I will accept this character, and this particular character, that is 2 cotyledon, it will be rejected. So basically keys, they have a pair of 2 contrasting character, and this pair of 2 contrasting character, what is it called as? It is called as a couplet. What is it called as? Couplet. Now in the couplet there will be the exception of one character and the rejection of the other character according to the character present in the organism. And now students, this each statement is called as what? Each statement is called as the lead. What is each statement called as? Each statement of a key is called as a lead. These 2 together is called as couplet. Individually it is called as a lead. Now students, there are separate taxonomic keys for each taxonomic category. There are many taxonomic category, and for each taxonomic category there is a separate key, and they are analytical or you can say logical in nature. So that is regarding the keys. So basically the keys are used for the identification of the plants and animal based on the similarities and dissimilarities. How it helps in identification of plants and animals? By selecting and eliminating the characters according to the presence or absence in the organism under study. And the use of the 2 contrasting pairs of character is called as couplet, which results in the acceptance of one character which is present in the organism and rejection of an character which is absent in an organism. And each statement of a key is called as what? It is called as a lead. Now the final taxonomical aids are flora, manuals, monograph and catalog. So first of all, flora. So what information the flora provides? So it contains the actual account of habitat and distribution of plants of a given area. So it takes into account a particular habitat and which type of plants are present in that particular habitat. That information is provided by flora. It also provides the index of the plant species found in the particular area. Which type of plant species are present in the particular area? That information is provided by the flora. So flora basically gives the information regarding the plant species found in a particular area. The next one is the manual. So basically what information is provided by manual? So basically it is useful in providing the information for identification of the names of the species found in an area. So in a particular habitat, what types of organisms are present and what are the names of the species found in a particular area, that information is provided by manual. So basically it provides the information for the identification of the names of the species found in a particular area. Now next one is monograph, which contains the information of one taxon. Say for example mammal is one taxon. Say for example angiosperm is one taxon, gymnosperm is one taxon, reptile is one taxon. So when something provides the information for only one taxon, what is it called as? Monograph. Now students, lastly catalogues. Now all of you might have gone for shopping, and when you go for shopping, you might have asked to the shopkeeper to show basically the catalog for the particular clothing you need to buy. So what a catalog contains? It contains, when you go for shopping of your clothes, and when you demand for some catalog, what that catalog contains? That catalog contains the design of various clothes. Same way there are catalogues in the botany. So what are these catalogues? So basically a catalog is a small booklet. What is a catalog? It is a small booklet, and this small booklets, it gives the information of the books which are related to botany. Normally catalogues are prepared for the botanical studies. So a catalog, it is a small booklet, like when you demand a catalog, when you go to buy clothes. So shopkeeper, he gives you a small booklet, and that booklet contains the designs which are found for particular clothes. So same way a botanical catalog is what? Again it is a small booklet which contains the information for the books which are related to botanical titles, the full name of the authors and their publication. So books which are used in botany, their authors and their publication. So all this information will be provided in a small booklet called as a catalog. So catalog, it is a small booklet which gives the account for the books which are related to botanical titles, the full name of the authors and their publication. So students, this is regarding the taxonomical aids. Which taxonomical aids did we study? Herbaria, which is a storehouse of the plants which are pressed, dried and they are preserved on the herbarium sheets. Then we studied regarding the botanical gardens. Botanical gardens are the places where the plants are maintained in the living condition. Then we have studied regarding the zoological parks. So what were zoological parks? Zoological parks are the places where wild animals are kept and they are maintained in the living conditions, and the conditions which are similar to their natural habitats will be provided. Then we studied regarding the museums. So museum basically maintains the specimens of the plants and animals. Here also they are not maintained in the living conditions. Finally we dealt with the key which helps in the identification of the plants and animals on the basis of their similarities and dissimilarities. Flora, which gives us the idea about the plants which are found in a particular area. Manuals, which provides the information regarding the names of the species found in an area. Monograph, which provides the information of one taxon, and finally a catalog, which is a small booklet which gives the information of the books which are related to botany, their authors and their publication. So students, here we come to the end of this chapter. In this chapter we have studied regarding the characteristics of the living organisms. Then we have studied regarding the taxonomy, systematics, classification, binomial nomenclature, and we have also studied the taxonomical categories, each and every taxonomical category in detail. And finally we have came to the end of this chapter by studying the various taxonomical aids. Now students, in the next video we will be dealing with the next chapter. Today I end my video here. Thank you students.